Masechet Kiddushin Daf Nun Aleph Mishnah Hamkadesh Isha Ubita O Isha Va'achota Ke'achat Enan Mikudashot. A man goes and simultaneously offers Kiddushin to a woman and her daughter, which either one of them separately would be permitted to this guy, but one is not allowed to be married to a woman and her daughter. Or if he offers Kiddushin to a woman and her sister, which again, separately would be okay, but now he simultaneously wants to be married to both of them, and both of these are Adayot, therefore there is no Kiddushin at all, none of them are Mikudeshet to him. And there's an actual story that happened just like this. כלכלה של תאנים ושלהן הייתה, ושל שביעית הייתה, ואמר הרי כולכם מקודשות לי בכלכלה זו, וקיבלה אחת מהן על ידי כולן, ואמרו חכמים אין החיות מקודשות. The story includes more complications than just this, but it does include two sisters. So we have a story where there were 5 women, 2 of them were sisters with each other. Some guy comes and takes a basket of figs, and the basket of figs was from their own field, from the woman's field, which normally would not be good. He has to give something that he owns, but that's okay in this case because it was a shiv'it year, and a shiv'it year, anybody can come and collect whatever is in the field. And then he said, you are all mikudashot to me with this basket of figs, and one of the women accepted it on behalf of all the rest of them. What is the verdict in this case? Hachamim say the 2 sisters are not mikudashot to him, neither of them. The other 3 are. Gemara will talk about this, why, but these 2 sisters are not. Why are the sisters not? Well, it's an application of the rule that we said above, that if you do Kiddushin with one sister, that's okay, right? Then you'll be Mikudeshet. And the other sister later, well, then that's not Kiddushin. That's any case of Adayot that doesn't work. But if you do them two at the same time, neither of them works, and so that's the rule that is applied in this story. Good. Now, how do we know that if you try to do Kiddushin with 2 sisters simultaneously, or mother and daughter, it doesn't work? Amar Rami bar Hamad Amar Kera, Isha lachota lo tikach lisror. HaTorah amra b'shah she'na'asu sarot zo lazo, lo yehe lo likuchin afilu be'achat mehem. We learn it from the very pasuk that teaches us that 2 sisters are arayot. And we say this pasuk is not simply talking about a case of where you married one sister and then you go and try to marry the other sister, where that is arayot, but actually this pasuk is talking about a case where you try to do kiddushin simultaneously, and that is inferred from to a woman and her sister lo tikach, do not marry them, don't become engaged to them. Lisrod means to become rivals. That's the word for co-wife. So we learn from this, at a time, if at the same time they would become co-wives with each other, then lotikach, there is no engagement. So that's how we are interpreting the pasuk. It's talking about a simultaneous kiddushin and saying lotikach, it doesn't work. That is that's the derivation of Rami bar Hama. However, Amar le Rava, as so often, they're always in dialogue and often at odds with each other. Rava says, no, that's not a good reading of the pasuk. Hachi, hainu dichtiv nichretu hanefashot ha'osot miqerev amam, ikidushin la tafseba, karet mi mechayev. Pasuk later on says that the people in this list, all the arayot, they get karet, right, including this one. Now, if there's no kiddushin, so why would there be karet? Right? It would just be that if you try to marry 2 sisters simultaneously, there's no kiddushin at all. If there's no kiddushin, and there's no punishment for having done that. So the fact that it says that one would get karet means that there is kiddushin there. And this doesn't make sense. Therefore, Rava says, no, this pasuk has to be talking about one after the other. If you do Kiddushin with one, then, okay, that Kiddushin is good. If he would go then and have relations with the other sister, then that would be liable to karet, right? That makes sense, because one of them is the first one that he does Kiddushin with, there is Kiddushin there. In the other case, there's no Kiddushin at all. Even if he would then go sleep with one of them, there would be no karet because he's not mikudeshet to either of them. Ela amar Rava. So Rava says, I will have a different derivation for this law. I agree with the law that simultaneous marriage, Kiddushin with two sisters is not good, but it's not from this pasuk. Rather, right? That pasuk is talking about marrying one woman and then another woman, but this Mishnah is explained based on a rule of Rabbah. Rabbah is Rava's teacher. Rabbah's rule is that any time two actions would not be effective if it was one after the other, and the second one would not be effective, then if you do them simultaneously, also neither of them are effective. And so the application in this case is, if I marry one sister, okay, that works. I just married one sister, and then sequentially, then I married the other one, the marriage would not be good. Kiddushin with any adayot does not take effect. So since marriage with the second one, if it was after the first one, would not take effect, therefore, if I try to do Kiddushin with both together, then neither one works. That's his general rule, and that would explain our Mishnah. Good. Now that we Rava quoted Rabbah, we're going to see in a few minutes that Rabbah actually has his own explanation for the Mishnah. And different from Rabbah, and he only said this explanation of Rabbah in order to give an answer on behalf of Rami Bar Chama. Okay, but now that we mentioned Rabbah, now we're going to challenge it a few times. Gufa. Amar Rabbah, kol sheno bezeh achar zeh, afilu bat achat eno. Anytime a second action done sequentially does not take effect, then if it's done simultaneously, also it does not take effect. Iti be Abaye. Abaye challenges this. Hamar bebe maaser perotav metukanim maaserotav mekulkalin. I have some produce and I have to take maaser, say maaser rishon. So it's supposed to be 10%. I have 100 olives, and so now I take 10. Supposed to take 10 and give it to the Levi. Instead, I say, I want to bring more. I want to give 20. So I separate 20. This is a problem because you can't separate more than 10. It has to be exactly 10. So if I take 20, now I have 80 left. The 80 left is good. Mitukanim, right? I did the proper thing. Those, might have to still take another maaser depending on the year, but for maaser rishon, that's good. The 80, I fixed. But the 20 that I I'm going to give to the Levi, those are problematic because 10 of those are maaser, 10 of them are tebel, because maaser was not taken from those 10, but they're all mixed up. So this is a major problem. Okay, so this is all from a braita in Masechet Demai. And that gives us halacha. Now Abaye asks, according to Rabbah's principle, why should this be so? Ve'amai nema kol she'eno b'zeh chazer arzeh afilu bat achat eno. Since if let's say I took 10 olives, made them maaser, then I say, I'm going to take 10 more. The second 10 does not become maaser at all. The first 10 is maaser. The second 10, you can't give more maaser than the first 10. So this is a case where it doesn't work sequentially. Therefore, we should say it does not take effect simultaneously either. If I give 20%, I should say none of it is maaser, and the whole 80 is all tebel. The whole 100 is tebel. Rather, right, if it didn't take effect, then the whole thing would be tebel. None of it would be maaser. Go do it again and take it properly. Just take 10. So what you see from this is a challenge to Rabbah, because in this baraita, when you take 20, so it does work when you do it simultaneously, even though if you do it sequentially, it would not take effect, the second one, but if you do it simultaneously, it does take effect. How is Rabbah going to answer it? אמר לה שני מעשה דאיתה לחסאים דאי אמר תתקדש פלגה דחיתתה kiddusha. He says maaser is different because you can make half of a grain of wheat maaser. If I would say, let half of this grain be designated as maaser, it would work. And therefore, it's not actually simultaneously making two tenths of the grain of Ma'aseh. That's not how it's working. When I separate 20 pieces of grain out of the 100, then it's not that all of them become Ma'aseh, but rather half of each grain becomes Ma'aseh. That's why it works simultaneously. The problem is that now I have half a grain is Ma'aseh, half a grain is not, and how am I going to deal with that? So that's the problem. But in fact, that's why it does take effect, and it's not an exception to Rabbah's rule. Okay, good. So we answered that. Now another challenge to Rabbah. I have to give a tenth of every animal that's born during a year, and the way you do it is you pass all the new animals that were born that year through a gate, and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, and the 10th one you say this is 10, and you mark it and designate it as a ma'aser. The rule is that anyone that you say this is 10 will be holy, even if you made a mistake. Let's say you counted wrong and you called the 9th one or the 11th one or whatever one 10, then that becomes holy as a shelamim. And in addition, whichever one is actually the 10th one does become ma'aseh, even if I called it the wrong name, because sometimes people get mixed up, and sometimes two will squeeze in together. Okay, now regarding ma'aseh behema, you can't have half an animal, unlike with grain, half a piece of grain can be ma'aseh, half an animal can't be ma'aseh. And also, it doesn't work sequentially, right? If I designate one animal and then the next one does not also become ma'aseh. Okay, so we know that this cannot work sequentially. Now we're going to present a case of simultaneous. Amar Rabba, Yasu Shenayim ba'asiri ukra'an asiri. He counts 8, 9, and then at the 10th point, 2 animals squeeze through the gate together, and he calls them both the 10th. What's the law? Asiri v'achadasar me'oravin ze bazeh. We can consider that that's the 10th and 11th, and that they are mixed up with each other. Which means that one of them will be ma'aser, one of them will be just a shalamim. We don't know which one is which, right? So we'll have to treat them both as holy. But you see here that even though they're being designated simultaneously, it does take effect. Even though if you did it one after the other, it would not take effect. That's the question. So we say, Shane Maser Behema Di'ite Beta'ut. Actually, it's not true. Maser Behema would take effect sequentially if it was done by mistake. Ditnan Mishnah Bechorot Kara Tishi'i Asiri Vela Asiri Tishi'i or Lahadasar Asiri Shiloshtam Mikudashot. Let's say a person is counting. He says 7, 8, he skips 9 and he goes right to 10. So the 9th one he calls the 10th one. But then he says, oh, I missed the 9th one. So the 10th one that goes through, he calls the 9th. And then he forgot that he already counted the 10th one before that. So after 9, he counts the 11th one as 10. So now we have all 3 are Kodesh. The 2 of them that he called 10 are Kodesh because he called them 10. And the one between them that he called the 9th was actually the 10th is also holy. So you see they have different types of holiness. One will be Ma'aseh, the other will be Korban Shelamim. What you see is that even if you make a mistake and you do it sequentially, still it has some level of Kedusha, although they're not all Ma'aseh, but this does have some level of Kedusha. Therefore, also when they go through simultaneously, that's fine. Rabbah's rule was only that if it doesn't work sequentially, then it won't work simultaneously. But here it does work sequentially. So yes, it will work simultaneously. All right, he answered that one. Now another challenge to Rabbah. Hare toda deleta beta'ut veleta nami bezeh achar zeh v'itmar toda shenishchata al shemonim halot Chizkiah amar kodshe קדשה לה 40 מתוך 80. ורבי יוחנן אמר לה קדשה לה 40 מתוך 80. When you bring a korban todah, because you got out of jail or went on a journey, you bring with it 40 loaves. Now these loaves, okay, you designate them, you put them on the side, they become holy when you do shechita on the korban todah. At that moment, they become holy. Okay, now you can only do 40, you can't do 80, you can't do more than 40. Now, with regarding Korban Todah, if you did it by mistake, it doesn't work. And if you did these 40 and then add another 40, it doesn't work. Now, what's the law that's going to be a problem and contradict us? Let's say you do Shechita and you have 80 loaves designated instead of just 40. What happens? Chizkiah says that 40 out of the 80 do become holy. Rabbi Yochanan says none of them become holy because you tried to do 80. So Rabbi Yochanan makes sense. Because just like if you take 40, make them holy, and then another 40, make them holy, only the first 40 are holy, the second one doesn't, if you do it sequentially. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan would be a good application of Rabbah. Since sequentially doesn't work, if you try to do it simultaneously, none of them become holy. Rabbi Yochanan is fine, but Chizkiah's opinion is against that of Rabbah, because he says, even though you tried to make all 80 holy, and if you did 40 and then 40, none of them would be good, but if he says, if you do it simultaneously, then it is good. How is Rabbah going to explain Chizkiah? And the answer is, La'it Mad Allah. No, we have another different explanation of this, as this machlok is limited to a specific case. Amar Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, Hakol modim kol echad amar kodsheh la 40 mitoch shemanim kadsheh. Actually, everybody agrees. Both Chizkiah and Rabbi Yochanan agree that if he says, I want 40 out of these 80 to become holy, then that's fine, because he's saying 40 out of them. If he says, I don't want only 40 to be holy, unless all 80, I insist on all 80 or nothing, then nothing, right? Because of that principle. 80 you can't make 80 of them holy, only 40 can be holy. And everybody agrees with that. But what if he didn't say anything? So in that case, Chizkiah thinks more sabar la harut kamechaven. What he had in mind when he said, "Oh, I want 80 to be holy," is that he really only wants 40, but he wants the other 40 to be a backup. Like just in case something happens to these 40, they get stolen, they get lost. So he says, okay, I want all 80 to be within the possibility of becoming holy, but really only 40 will be, the rest are backup. So therefore it's as if, even though he doesn't say anything, it's as if he's saying 40 out of the 80, so that's why it works. Whereas Rabbi Yochanan thinks that that he has intention when he says that, his intention when he says nothing is that he wants to bring a lot of offering, he wants to bring extra so he can invite more people. But you're not allowed to do that, so therefore it doesn't work. Because you can't do more than 40, you can't do more than 40 linearly, and you can't do it simultaneously either. And so, in fact, everybody agrees to everybody agrees to the principle of Rabbah that just if you can't do it sequentially, also it won't work simultaneously. Now back to Rabbah, who gave this answer, who brought in Rabbah's principle and applied it to the Mishnah in the first place. Why does Rabbah need Rabbah's opinion that if you do it simultaneously it doesn't work, then if serially doesn't work, then simultaneously also doesn't work? Why does Rabbah need that principle of Rabbah to explain our Mishnah? Rabbah has his own principle that can explain it. This is Kiddushin that cannot be consummated with bi'ah. And Rabbah says, anytime you have Kiddushin, that if you would do it, then you would not be able to do bi'ah after that, then the Kiddushin already itself is invalid. The application here is that, let's say, I would say that the Kiddushin works. I do Kiddushin for two sisters. So let's say it works, and now both are Mikudeshet. Would I be able to consummate either one and have bi'ah? With this one, no, because I'm Mikudeshet to her sister. With that one, no, because I'm Mikudeshet to her sister. So this is Kiddushin. If it would work, it's Kiddushin that could not lead to bi'ah, and therefore the Kiddushin itself is invalid. That principle by itself can explain the Mishnah. Why doesn't he rely on his own principle? Why is he quoting a principle from Rabbah? And the answer is Rami bar Chama ka'amar. He was giving an answer for Rami bar Chama. Rami bar Chama doesn't agree with that principle of Rabbah, and therefore Rabbah said, listen, friend, right? You brought a pasuk, lisrod. That pasuk is not simultaneously, it's talking about serially. Therefore, for you, you disagree with my principle, but here you can apply Rabbah's principle, and that way you can have an explanation. So Rabbah was being nice and generous and helping Rami bar Chama for his own, according to his own shita. Even according to Rabbah, he has his own explanation. Now that we quoted Rabbah, we're going to bring that in depth and the other opinion and have challenges to it. Itmar Kiddushin shen mesrim nebi'ah Abaye amar havu Kiddushin, Rabbah amar lahavu Kiddushin. You do Kiddushin in a case where it would be a problem if it would not be able to lead to bi'ah. Abaye says the Kiddushin is still good. Okay, it's true you can't consummate it, but the Kiddushin is still Kiddushin. And Rabbah says no, there's no Kiddushin at all. Amar Rabbah bar ahina asberali כי כך איש אישה ובעלה. קידושין למסורים לביאה עבור קידושין, קידושין שהם מסורים לביאה לעבור קידושין. Rava says, I have a source that Barahina showed me, because the pasuk says, if a man takes a woman, meaning that's kiddushin, ki kach, right, kicha, that's kiddushin, ubala, and then has bi'ah. So if the kiddushin can lead to bi'ah, then it's valid kiddushin. If the kiddushin cannot lead to bi'ah, like in this case, then there was no kiddushin to begin with. Now we're going to challenge Rava. From our Mishnah, Tenan, hamekadesh isha ubita, o isha v'achota kachat enan mekudashot. He tried to do kiddushin to a mother and daughter, or to two sisters simultaneously, is no kiddushin. So we can infer from that only if he tries to marry both of them, that's why there's no kiddushin, because simultaneously, no good. Ha'achat me'isha ubita o me'isha v'achota mekudeshet. But let's say he says a different formula. He goes and gives money to these two sisters, and he says, I want to be married to one of you, but doesn't designate which one. But he's only trying to marry one of them, not both of them. This could be done like through a messenger, right? If they both designate a messenger, and so the man gives money to the messenger. This is for one of the two sisters, only one of them, but it doesn't say which one. Now, really, the kiddushin should be good, because you're allowed to do kiddushin with one of the sisters. And in that case, Abaye would say it's good kiddushin. Now he can't consummate it because he doesn't know which one it is. If he really did kiddushin with sister A, then he would not be allowed to do bi'ah with sister B, and vice versa. Since he doesn't know which one, he can't consummate it. He can't go on. Okay, you'd have to give a get to both to get out of this safek. But it would be a good kiddushin according to Abaye. Rava, however, says no. There's no kiddushin at all because it cannot lead to bi'ah. Now here's our question: V'amai kiddushin shemisin lebianinhu tiyubta derava. We made an inference. The Mishnah only says there's no kiddushin when he tries to marry both of them. We can infer from that if we only tried to marry only one of them, it would be good. But even if he tries to marry only one of them, according to Rava, it cannot lead to bi'ah, and therefore it should not be a good kiddushin. But the inference from the Mishnah is that it is a good kiddushin if he tried to only marry one of them. Challenge to Rava. Rava answers the question with another question. Amalach Rava ulutamich emasefa. According to you, what? So you prefer Abaye, that it does work? Look at the story in the continuation. Maaseh bechamesh nashim ubehen shete achayot v'diket ehad kalkala sheltim shelehen hayta v'shel shebeit hayta v'amar harei kolechem mukudashot li bechalkala zo v'amru chachamim en achayot mekudashot achayot hu de'en mekudashot ha-nochriot mekudashot. So look at the story. It just quotes the story exactly as it was, where you have 5 women and 2 of them are sisters, and he takes a basket of figs, and it was theirs, but it was Shevi'it, and he says, you are all mekudashot to me. And Hachamim say that the sisters are not, there's no kiddushin with the sisters, but we can infer that for the rest of the sisters, the rest of the woman, there is kiddushin. Nochriot, calls them nochriot. Doesn't mean they're not Jewish. It means that they are not related. It is good. Now why? If he in fact says, I want to do kiddushin with all of you, then it would be equivalent to a case where, let's say, a man is giving over something to some other guy. And if you would just give it to that guy, say, here, acquire this, right? Do an acquisition would be good. But instead he says, you acquire it and your donkey acquire it. Now a donkey can't acquire anything because it just doesn't work. So when he says that, he's linking the two together. And just like a donkey can't acquire anything, the guy can't acquire it either, right? That's the general principle. That if you include non-valid items in your formula, then the whole thing is null and void. And that's what he means, right? Oh, go acquire it. You and your donkey. Well, a donkey can. So it's a way of saying you cannot acquire it. And that would be the same here. We're not calling the women donkeys. We're just giving an analogy that if part of a formula doesn't work, if a formula doesn't work for part of the people that are included in it, then it won't work for the rest. And therefore, in the Sefa, Rava is challenging, why would the Kiddushin work for the other 3 women? It should be the same thing. Since the Kiddushin didn't work for these 2, it should not work for anyone. So, how would you explain that? Okay. Rather, it has to be a case where he gives the basket to one of them, and he says, one of you five should be mikudeshet to me. Bekatane en achayot mikudashot. And even though he says only one of the five, nevertheless, the none of them are mikudashot to him. Now, this is a challenge to Abaye, because according to Abaye, if you just say one of the five, even if it was one of the two sisters, it would work, because the Kiddushin is good Kiddushin. He only married one of the sisters. Yeah, he doesn't know which one. It can't lead to Bi'ah. But according to Abaye, that's okay. Even if it can't lead to Bi'ah, the Kiddushin is valid. And so he should be, the Kiddushin should work for one of the five women, because it does work for one of the two sisters. And Rava just proved that we have to be talking about a case where he says only one of you. So now we have, instead of one question, now we have two questions. Rava cannot explain the inference that we made from the beginning of the Mishnah, and Abaye will have a hard time explaining the story at the end of the Mishnah. We have to answer both. Abaye meteres l'ta'ameh, Rava meteres l'ta'ameh. Both of them can explain the entire Mishnah according to their own opinions. How so? Abaye meteres l'ta'ameh. We'll start with Abaye, even though we asked that question second. HaMekadesh isha bita o isha v'achota k'achat enam mikudashot. He quotes the beginning of the Mishnah the same as we have it. You do Kiddushin with a mother and daughter or two sisters simultaneously. It's not good. But the inference is that if you do Kiddushin with only one of them, and you don't know which one, then the Kiddushin is good. Even though it can't lead to Biyah, that's okay. So far, so good for Abaye. But here's how is he going to explain the story. But if he specifically announced only someone who is fit for bi'ah will be mikudeshet to me, then neither is mikudeshet, because he added this condition, and he doesn't know which one was done. He did kiddushin with, so neither of them are fit for bi'ah, and therefore there's no kiddushin. So Abaye, he has to add in these words to the Mishnah to turn it into a case where it would not be good kiddushin, even if he did kiddushin to only one of them. And so that's how he explains the story. So he has to change the formula in the story also. The guy there was five women there, two of them were sisters, and he took this basket of figs, and he says, she who is fit to have kiddushin with me, she was fit to have bi'ah with me, she will be mikudeshet to me. So Chamim say, neither of the two sisters, because since he doesn't know which one, neither of the two sisters would he be able to have bi'ah with, and therefore the two sisters are out, but one of the other three women, the kiddushin would be valid for. So good that we explained it, everything according to Abaye. Rava can explain it otherwise. HaMekadesh achat me'isha ubita o achat me'isha v'achota nasa kemi shekidesh isha ubita o isha v'achota ke'achat ve'en mekudashot. Rava is going to add an explanation and say the kiddushin is not valid in either case. If someone does kiddushin with only one of a mother and daughter, but doesn't designate which one, or one of two sisters, but doesn't designate each one, that will be the same as if he tries to do kiddushin with both a mother and daughter, or both two sisters, and the kiddushin does not work in any case. So now he just took out the inference that we tried to make, and from which we challenged Rava. No, don't make an inference that both of them. If you say both of them, it's no good. But if you do only one of them, that is good kiddushin. No, neither case is it a good kiddushin. משתי אחיות מקודשות לי בכלכלה זו, ואמרו חכמים אין אחיות מקודשות. And the story goes where there were five women and two of them were sisters, and he took this basket of figs and he said, all of you, meaning the three that are not related, and also one of the two sisters that should be mikudashot to me, and in that case both sisters are not mikudashot. Because even though he only said one of the sisters Still, he can't do bi'ah with both sisters because he doesn't know which one. He just said one of them. He didn't designate which one, and therefore neither will be mekudashot. But the other three, the kiddushin, will work because they can all lead to bi'ah. And so that's how Rava can explain this Mishnah. We next challenge Rava from a Mishnah later on in this Masechet, Tashema, HaMekadeshet Bito Stam, En HaBogrot Bichlal, HaKetanot Bichlal, Ve'amai Kiddushin She'en Mesun Lebi'aninhu, Ve'tiyubta de Rava. If a father marries off his daughter, but doesn't specify which one. He says, my daughter is married off to you. So which one? If he has adult daughters, the adult daughters are certainly not involved in the mix because a father does not have a right to marry off his adult daughters once they're a bogeret after 12 and a half years. That's the end of the Mishnah. We infer, therefore, that the minor daughters are included in the possibility of being one of the ones that is mukadashot. And the problem is, why? Why should that be? This kiddushin cannot be consummated because if he has, let's say he has two minor daughters, and so we don't know which one is the one that was mikudeshet, so this man, the groom, will not be able to take either one because this one might be the sister of the one that he had kiddushin with, and therefore would be prohibited. Even though, however, the Mishnah says the kiddushin works, we just don't know which one it works with. This is against Rava because according to Rava, this cannot lead to bi'ah and therefore should not be a kiddushin at all. Rava will answer. Amalach Rava hachab meskinan keshe'en sham ela gedola uktana. Rava says this Mishnah's ruling that there is kiddushin is only true when there is only one adult daughter and one minor daughter. The adult daughter is certainly out of the mix because the father has no right over her, and there is only one minor daughter, and therefore he can go ahead and consummate the marriage with the minor daughter. Ha bogurot katane. Hold on, it doesn't fit with the wording of the Mishnah that says plural, that there are many adult sisters. He has many adult daughters. We answer, my bogrot bogrot alma. No, we don't mean that in this particular family, in this particular case, there are many, but rather that in general, right, adult daughters in general, in many cases, in many cases like this, would not be included into the mix. Okay, actually, the truth is, it could be that there are many adult daughters, and the main thing is that there's only one minor daughter. That's what makes it a valid kiddushin. We just want to have some good symmetry. That if there's one adult daughter, so one minor daughter, this is one adult daughter. Now, if this is the case, where there's one adult and one minor daughter, then what's the chidush of this Mishnah? It's obvious that the father has no right over the adult daughter, and then that's it. There's only one eligible daughter, so the kiddushin will certainly be valid. Oh, we're talking about a case where the adult daughter designated her father as a messenger. Dad, can you find the guy for me and just do the kiddushin? So now the father does have a right to do kiddushin for his adult daughter and for his minor daughter. And I might have thought maybe he has the adult daughter in mind and not the minor daughter. I might have thought that. And therefore, the Mishnah comes to teach us that a person will not set aside something that he gets benefit from. You see, if he marries off the minor daughter, then the father keeps the money. And so he would certainly prefer that than marrying off his adult daughter, in which the money goes to the adult, to the daughter. He's only acting as a shaliach. And so that's the chidush of the Mishnah, that we exclude the adult daughter and therefore the minor daughter can go ahead and consummate the marriage. Mila askina damrina la kiddushay lididach. Wait a second, or maybe we're talking about a case where the adult daughter designates her father as a shaliach and says, and you can keep the money too, in which case the father keeps the money either way. Even in that case, still it would be true, a person who is not going to leave off a mitzvah that he has is coming upon him himself, which is to to marry off his minor daughter, his mitzvah, and do something that is not a mitzvah. He's not a mitzvah to him to marry off his adult daughter. His adult daughter, go find someone herself. He's helping out, but it's not a mitzvah. So when a father is faced with a choice, he would do the mitzvah one, and that's the chidush of the Mishnah. Even in such a case where he gets no monetary benefit, he gets a mitzvah benefit. All right, Rava answered that question, and now another one. Tashema, mi sheyesh lo chite banot, mi shete nashim. V'amar, kidashti et biti hagedola, ve'eni yodea im gedola shebegedolot, im gedola shebeketanot, im ketana shebegedolot, im shehi gedola min hagedola shebeketanot, kulan asurot, chutz min ketana shebeketanot, ibre Rabbi Meir. Another Mishnah later on in this Masechet says a man has two sets of daughters. Two daughters from a first marriage and two daughters that are from a second marriage. Let's call them A, B, C, and D. A is older than B is older than C is older than D. Right? A and B are sisters, C and D are sisters. And now, this father is going to marry off one of them. Let's say they're all minors. And so he tells the man, Kidashti, he tells the groom, right? I am betrothing to you my Beti Hagedola, my older daughter. Well, which one is he referring to? This is ambiguous language. We don't know if this means A, who is the oldest of the older group, or C, who is the older of the younger group, or B, who is the younger of the older group, because she is still called older because she's older than C. It could be referring to A, B, or C. They're all older in some sense. So therefore, A, B, and C are all prohibited to him because we don't know which one he meant. The only one that is definitely out of the picture is D, because that is not considered older in any sense. Therefore, A, B, and C all need to receive a get from the groom, and that way they can go and get remarried. D does not need to. She can go marry someone else without receiving a get. All that is according to Rabbi Meir. So this is a question, because why should the Kiddushin even be effective? Since he can't consummate it, because between A and B they are sisters, and if he's married to A, it could be then he can't be with B. If B, then he can't be with A. So according to Rava's rule, the Kiddushin should not be valid, but yet it says here that the Kiddushin might be valid with A and B also. Challenge to Rava, we answer, we're talking about a case where when they did the Kiddushin originally, they knew, the father knew which one it was, right? He had in mind a specific one. He had in mind, let's say, B. But just later on, he forgot which one it was. He said Hagedolah, and he had in mind a specific one. So only one of them is Mikudeshet, and therefore the groom is actually at that point permitted. At the time of Kiddushin, he'll be permitted to consummate the marriage. The problem only showed up later. Therefore, at the time of Kiddushin, the Kiddushin is valid. Only now we have a sefek, so now we can't consummate. But that doesn't undo the Kiddushin retroactively. So therefore, this fits with Rava. And it's precise in the language because the father says, I don't know which one it is, because he forgot later on. It doesn't say it is not known. Nobody knows, right, that he just used ambiguous language and had nothing in mind, and therefore it could apply to anyone. If that case, the Kiddushin to A and B would not be good. Instead, he did know, but then forgot later. Now, if this is the case, then what is this Mishnah even teaching us? It all seems to be obvious. This comes to exclude the opinion of Rabbi Yosef, who says a person doesn't place himself into uncertainty. According to Rabbi Yosef, if he says B'tia Gedolah, then certainly it means A, the oldest of the oldest, because a person is careful not to use language where that could be misinterpreted. And so if he meant B or C, he wouldn't say the oldest, because that would be confusing. So therefore he must have meant something that would be, the only possibility that would be unambiguous is he said the oldest and he meant A. and therefore he can go ahead and marry A, and B, C, and D are free to marry anybody else. So to exclude that possibility, that's why Rabbi Meir says, no, I don't agree. He thinks that sometimes people do put themselves into uncertainty. They say language that is not so clear, that they don't think about it, they don't think it through so carefully, and therefore we have to worry about that, and A, B, and C are all prohibited to marry other people unless they get a get. Ta'ashema. Now Mishnah and Yevamot. Misha Kiddush, another challenge to Rava. Misha Kiddush achat mishatei achayot ve'eno yodeh eze kiddush. A guy went and did Kiddushin to one of two sisters, but he doesn't know which one. I don't know, maybe they're like identical twins or something, and he doesn't know, or he didn't see her face good, whatever reason, he doesn't know which one he did Kiddushin with. She doesn't know either. And noten get lazo ve'get lazo. He has to give a get to both of them, and then they can go ahead and get remarried. So why? The question is why? According to Rava, both the Kiddushin should be invalid, because it says he doesn't know, and so therefore he can't consummate the marriage, and any Kiddushin that can't be consummated is not a good Kiddushin at all. Why is it a good Kiddushin, and therefore a get is required from both? We're talking about a case where he did know, but then they got mixed up. In other words, at the time of Kiddushin, there was one of these sisters was there, and he gave it to one definite one. So at the time he said, okay, for this person who's right in front of me, it is permitted to me. We can do bi'ah, we can consummate with bi'ah. So the Kiddushin is good. Later on, then he said, oh, there's another sister, I didn't even know about that one, and they got mixed up, and now he doesn't know which one was which. So that's, and how does she not know? Maybe it's through a messenger or something. And so that afterwards, it got mixed up, and so the Kiddushin was good originally. The problem only is now, so that's why there is a good Kiddushin, but we don't know which one, and he has to give a get to both. And this is actually precise in the language of the Mishnah, because it says he doesn't know, not that it's not known, right? There is a definite answer out there, it's just that he forgot what it was. If so, isn't this ruling obvious? If there You're right, that law is obvious. The reason why we had to bring it is for the case of the continuation of that Mishnah that says if this groom died and he has one brother, so the brother has to give chalitza to both of them. He can't do yibum with either because he doesn't know if this woman is the one he's supposed to do yibum with. Well, then it would be permitted if this one is the one that had the kiddushin. But if not, then he has a zikah to that sister, and if you have a zikah to one sister, you can't do yibum with the other. So therefore, since he doesn't know, he can't do yibum with either. For them to both get married, he has to do chalitza. Just like both will need a get, both will require chalitza. That's in the case when there's one brother surviving. But if there's two surviving brothers, then one does chalitza. Once one of them does chalitza, so now both women are free, and there is no zikah anymore. So then the other brother, the one that didn't do chalitza, can then go and do yibum, because he would be permitted to do either it's yibum. In other words, if one did chalitza to the one that was not required, was that the kiddushin was not with in the first place, so then that act is nothing. And then the other brother can go and do yibum with the one that actually was the widow, and that would be good yibum. And if not, if the first brother did chalitza with the widow, then that's it. That tie is broken, and the other brother can then go and do marriage. That would just be married is permitted, because this would be a permitted. There's nothing precluding that marriage. So either way, it's good. On the other hand, if they neither one did chalitza, but each of the brothers married one of the brothers married one of the sisters, and the other brother married one of the sisters, whichever one it was. If they already did it b'diavad without asking the Beit Din, we are not going to make them separate, because what's the worst that could have happened is that this one married someone that is achot zikukato. Well, one of them did, right? Certainly marry achot zikukato. It's the sister of someone someone that he has a zikah with, that he's supposed to do yibum or chalitza. But that prohibition is only midrabanan. So, lechatechila, do chalitza first, get rid of the zikah, and then the other one can do a marriage, and that there's no problem at all there. But b'di'avad, if they violated a drabanan, since it's only drabanan, b'di'avad, that's not cause enough to make them both separate. Davka michalas v'adar yibumeh, aval yibumeh v'adar michalas la. Dekapaga b'achot zikukato. The Gemara here simply clarifies that in that lechatechila case, it's important to go in that order. First, one of the brothers does chalitza, and then the other one can do yibum. But if one does yibum first, and then the other brother does chalitza, that is not the recommended lechatechila order, because there's a 50-50 chance that that the first one is doing yibum with the wrong sister, the one that does not require to do yibum. And that wrong sister, the one that's not the widow, is the sister of the one that has a zikah. And that's a drabanan violation to go and marry achot zekukato. Therefore, make sure that one does chalitza first, and then the other can do a marriage, which will either be yibum or marriage. That's lechatechila, the proper way, so that one does not violate even this derabanan law. Okay, now we have yet another challenge against Ravat Hashema. Shenaim kishekideshu shete achayot, ze eno yodea ezo kidesh, veze eno yodea ezo kidesh, ze noten shenegitin, veze noten shenegitin. Hachanam. Okay, so that's the question. This from the rest of the continuation of that Mishnah there. You have two guys who did Kiddushin with two sisters. And one of them says, I don't know which sister I did Kiddushin to. And the other guy also says, I don't know which sister I did Kiddushin to. So the verdict is, in that case, both of them have to give 2 gitin. Right? This one gives gitin to both sisters, and that one gives a get to both sisters, because they don't know which one it is. Now we have a question. Both of them are Kiddushin that cannot lead to bi'ah, because if he did Kiddushin with this sister, he would not be able to be with the other one, and vice versa. They both don't know. So why don't we say that both Kiddushin are invalid, and that would be according to Rava, but we don't say that, so this is a challenge to Rava. This also is a case where both of these men knew which one they did Kiddushin with to be at first, when they first did Kiddushin, only that afterwards, they forgot. So the Kiddushin was valid up front. But now they don't know, so that now the safek developed afterwards. That's why they both have to give 2 gets. And that's precise in the language, because it says that each one says, I don't know. It doesn't mean that it was not known. It was known. Just now they don't know anymore. Well, isn't that obvious then? What's the chidush here? Sefa isterichale met velazeach velazeach zecholes lishtehen. Oh, we need it for the continuation. If both of these men die before they gave a get, they're supposed to give a get because they can't consummate the marriage, so you want to allow these women to go marry someone else. But before they got a chance to do that, they both died, and so now there's a possibility that the Kiddushin was good with one of them. The Kiddushin was good with one of them for sure, and so but both of them died, and each one has a surviving brother. And so what do the brothers do? They can't do yibum because they don't know which sister to do yibum with. And if they pick the wrong one, then that could be achot zekukato, which is a sur midrabanan. So therefore, one brother has to do chalitza to both women, and the other surviving brother has to do chalitza to both of them. That's case 1. Next case, lazeh echad velazeh shetayim. Those 2 men that died, one of them had 1 brother, but the other one had 2 brothers. Ha'echad choles lishtehen. The one that has 1 brother, if has 1 surviving brother, he has to give chalitza to both of them because he doesn't know which one's which. Hashenayim echad choles ve'echad mi'abem. But the other guy who died, who has 2 surviving brothers, one of those surviving brothers has to do chalitza with both of them. Once he does chalitza with both of them, there is no more zikah. Therefore, the surviving brother can go ahead and do yibum with either one, because either the first brother did chalitza with the non-widow, and so he's doing yibum with the other one, who is the widow, good, that's proper yibum. Or he did chalitza with the widow, now there's no zikah, the other brother is permitted to go ahead and marry her. Im kadmu v'kansu en mosi'in otan miyadam. If these two brothers, right, this is the guy who died, who has two surviving brothers, it's supposed to be that one of them should do chalitza and the other then can do yibum lechatechila. But if that didn't happen, and they both, each of these two brothers married one of the two sisters, b'di'avad, you won't make them get divorced, because at worst, they violated achot zikukato, which is the Rabbanan, so b'di'avad, we will not make them get divorced. Now we clarify a slightly different situation. Davka, all that is true if michalas v'adar ivumeh. If the guy who died, who has only one brother, it's really important that he does chalisa first. So that woman is now free, and only then the other guy who has two brothers, they can go and do, one does chalitza, one does yibum, and in that case, b'di'avad, if they both married, we would let them stay married. Aval yibumeh v'adar michlas la, but if the guy who died, who has only one surviving brother, if he doesn't do chalitza first, then you're going to have a more serious problem, because that woman is not allowed to be with another guy from the shuk. And so if the guy who died, who has only one surviving brother, he doesn't do anything yet, and the other guy who has two surviving brothers, and of those two surviving brothers, one does chalitza, one does yibum, there is a major problem, because the one that does yibum is now 50% chance that he is doing yibum marrying, really marrying, 50% chance that he's marrying someone who has a zikah to the other guy, right? Someone who's not his own brother, but someone else completely. And she is not allowed to marry someone from the shuk. This is worse than achot zikukato. See, with the two brothers, either he's marrying the right one, or he's marrying the sister of the right one. The sister of the right one is achot sumid rabbanan. But in the case we're talking about, where the first guy, the one that has only one brother, didn't do chalitza yet. Once he does chalitza, she's free to marry anyone, so it's fine. But before he does chalitza, if she goes and marries anybody else, that's a deoraita problem, and so therefore you have to make sure that the guy with one surviving brother does chalitza first, and only then the guy with two brothers, they can do their thing, hopefully lechatechila, by doing chalitza and then yibum. Okay, last, and this will be a successful challenge against Rava. Tashema, detani tavyume. You have one guy who has 5 sons, another guy who has 5 daughters. This is like a Brady Bunch scenario. The fathers are getting together, and the one with the 5 sons says, let's let one of your daughters be mikodeshet to one of my sons. But they don't specify which one. So now we have a big problem, because we don't know which one this applies to. So now every single boy has to give 5 gitin, one to every single girl. And all the brothers have to do that. In other words, we have to go write up 25 gitin. Every boy to every one of the girls, because it could be any of those possibilities. Met ehad mehen, kol achad v'achad tzricha arba'a gitin v'chalisa me'echad mehen. If one of those boys dies, then we're going to require 4 gitin, right? There's 4 surviving brothers. They all have to give a get, because maybe the one who died was not the one who did Kiddushin. So they still have to give gitin. But maybe that was the guy, and any of these 4 might be required to do yibum. We can't do yibum. May be required to do halisa. So they all have to do halisa. Only one has to do chalitza, because only once one brother does chalitza, then that's it. The zikah is broken with all of them. So you still need 4 gitin, and one of them, anyone, has to do chalitza. All this is necessary in order for the sisters to be able to marry anybody else, because otherwise one of them is mikudeshet, or has a zikah. So we have to allow them all to get married. Now, this is a challenge because since this Kiddushin cannot be consummated because none of the brothers know if this is his bride or the sister of his bride, which is prohibited. So according to Rava, you should not require anything. So why would you require all these gitin? So challenge to Rava. Maybe over here you also say the father had in mind one specific man and one specific daughter, and he knew only afterwards he got mixed up, right? He was pointing to that one over there and this one over here, but then they started running around and he forgot which one it was. But at the time of Kiddushin, it was a specific person. Maybe you'll say the same answer we said in all the previous cases. You can't say that here because ha'achat mibenotecha lechad mibanai katane. Here he said one of your daughters to one of my sons. He did not specify which one it was. It's not like the other cases where he says eni yodeya, I don't know which one, but I did specify one. Here he just said one of them and he did not specify. So from the beginning, none of them were specified, and even though none of them were specified, so according to Rava, the law should be none of them are specified. It could be any one, so it cannot be consummated. There should be no Kiddushin here, and yet the Mishnah says that there is a Kiddushin, and that's why you need all these gitin, because we don't know which one it is. This is a conclusive disproof de tiyubta de Rava tiyubta against Rava, and for that reason hilchata kivate de Abaye biyal kegam. We know that generally halacha follows Rava except in 6 cases. 6 cases are remembered by a mnemonic yal kegam. Each of these letters refers to one case, and the kof in the kegam is kiddushin that cannot be consummated with bi'ah. That's a case where Rava says no kiddushin. Halacha is like Abaye who says that the kiddushin is valid. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.